If you have ever thought about having a water birth, then like me, you probably found that the main situation in which that could happen is at home. And you buy the home birth kit and the inflatable tub, and then you fill it up and get everything ready, and the midwife comes over and all of that. But if you ever thought that a water birth would be fantastic because of the magical epidural-like feeling that the water would provide, but you didn't want to have a home birth, it seemed like maybe a water birth was just always off the table. But I'm here to tell you that is actually not the case in some instances. And I'm really, really excited to share this story with you because I was able to find a way to have a water birth in a hospital. So it was amazing. I got both of the things that I wanted, and I wasn't able to find a lot of videos on hospital water births. So I'm happy to add mine to the list, and I hope that it really helps you. So we live in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I found that the University of Utah has a couple of tubs in their main hospital where they deliver babies. And they said, we have a few, and if you happen to give birth on a day when one is available and you don't have any complications that would prohibit us medically from allowing you to give birth in the water, then you can use it. So I was really excited. It was something that I had been thinking about for a few months leading up to my labor and delivery experience. And I thought, you know what? This is something I really want to try. So my name is Kirsten. If you're new, I'm so excited to be able to tell you my story. Grab yourself a glass of ice water. It is definitely heating up outside. Although I do have my cozy blanket because I run cold anyway. So comment down below if it's 70 outside and you still shiver, because that's me. Probably holdover anemia from my pregnancies, now that I think about it. All right, well, let's not think too much about that. I will talk instead about my birth experience. So the first thing I'll say is that my baby was late. Both of my daughters actually were born at 41 weeks and 2 days. I have no idea how that ended up working out, but the nurse said that was my particular cooking time, which I thought was kind of a funny expression. But so leading up to my birth experience, I want to say probably around 38 weeks or so, I started to have contractions all the time. I'm telling you, I would wake up in the morning and I would have some contractions. This is my second child, right? So I've been through labor and delivery before. I know what they feel like. And these contractions felt potentially real, right? Like they would present the same feeling of the tightening. It would feel like a very, very strong period cramp coming on, and then they would sort of go away and then come back and go away and then come back. And I was like, okay, this isn't just a stiffness or a soreness. I really think these are contractions. But they just kept happening like that for around 3 weeks, and it was infuriating and maddening. And so if you are experiencing that in late pregnancy right now, and you just feel the constant defeat of thinking that you're going into labor, and then a few hours later the contractions die and you realize that you're not, and you just feel like it's never going to happen, I'm here to tell you that I'm in solidarity with you. I know how that feels, and it will end. It just, in the moment, doesn't feel like that. So I just will recommend that you stay hydrated and focus on other things. Clean your house. I don't know, hang out with your other kids, talk to your husband, just do anything else and don't think about it, because that is the enemy of progress, I think, is that anxious focus, you know? So I'm telling you all of this because I do think it's relevant to my actual labor experience. So fast forward these 3 weeks or so, I'm having all of these contractions that end up dying and don't do anything. And I had a few midwife appointments in between those, and I would say, you know, I'm having these contractions, but there's no fluid, there's no really other discomfort aside from the contraction pains every now and then, and they didn't have any reason to think that I was even in early labor. So I did a couple of membrane sweeps, and those didn't really seem to do anything. They would bring on some contractions for a few hours after each one, but then the contractions would die, and then I was back to where I was. And so that was also irritating. I also was dilated to, I think, a 2 for like 2 weeks. And so this is also what I would say. If you don't seem to change in dilation leading up to labor, it's okay. It really is. Because when your body's ready, your body is ready. And your cervix will dilate and open and soften the way that it's supposed to. And it will happen the way it's meant to happen, but it can feel very frustrating in the moment. And what I've learned from both of my labors is that it doesn't really mean anything if you aren't super dilated before you go into labor. It just doesn't. Like, it's not connected at all. And I used to think that it would be, and it isn't. So anyway, I hope you can take heart from that. So now we get to 41 weeks and 2 days. I woke up at about 5:15 in the morning, and I was having contractions. But as I said, by this point, I was so frustrated and defeated, I had no idea if they were actually going to lead to anything. But I knew that since I was over 41 weeks pregnant, anything could be labor, and labor could be starting at any point. And I had the contractions that morning were like, I do think that they were a little bit stronger. And so I thought, I really don't know if I should hold off on this. I think it's probably a good idea to go in because we live about 45 minutes from the University of Utah Hospital. And I didn't want to take any chances because this was my second baby and I didn't know, how quickly the baby would come. So let me think, where was I? Okay, so 5:15. I wake up 5:15. I think the contraction woke me up actually. And so I started walking around. I got up and I sort of thought maybe this might be the day. So I started getting dressed, brushing my hair, brushing my teeth, trying to eat something small. And I called midwives and I said, I'm having some contractions, but they're not regular. They're spaced out for sure. And I can't really, feel a pattern with them. And so I don't know if this means anything. But the midwife was like, well, you're 41 and 2. They do feel strong. And because you live far away, I really think you should just come in. And I will also say, by the way, since I was over 41 weeks, the midwives had already put me down for a scheduled induction for about 3 or 4 days after this point. So I would have been like 41 and 4 or something when I would have been scheduled to be induced. But she was like, I think because of what you're describing, how the pains are, you should just come in. So I woke up my husband and I said, okay, Joe, it's time. And he was like, what? Okay, what? I felt kind of bad. I think he was in sort of a deep sleep, but he woke up. And luckily, I will tell you guys this, luckily, we had my mother-in-law sleep over because we thought the labor might happen, pretty quickly. And we didn't want to be able to, we didn't want to have to wait for someone to scramble to come over to watch our older daughter, who was 18 months at the time. And so she agreed to sleep over. And this was the first night she slept over. I cannot believe how amazing that timing worked out that we had her there. So my husband went up and got her. She had already been awake, which is nice. She's an early riser, so that worked out for us. But he went upstairs, he got her, and put our suitcases in the car. They were all packed and ready to go. And the midwife actually told me to take a heating pad with us in the car, which I did not do the first time I had a baby. And I'm telling you, I really wish I had, because that heating pad experience while driving to the hospital was so wonderful. It was just perfect. So if you are about to go into labor and you have like a bag ready to go to take in the car with you and you have an outlet in your car, seriously think about taking a heating pad because it was wonderful. I asked her, I was like, isn't the heating pad going to potentially hurt the baby? And she was like, no, the baby's coming out. It's totally fine. You can use the heating pad. And I was like, yes. So the heating pad was amazing. We started driving. Luckily, just because of the time that we left the house, we ended up not hitting traffic. But my husband said that when he got off the highway and we were heading up to the university parking lot, he could see the traffic on the highway start to build up. And so we got incredibly lucky because I will tell you that once we got to the hospital, everything very much picked up. And I do not think we would have had a lot of time if we got stuck in traffic. And I think my husband would have ended up delivering the baby on the side of the highway, which would have been an adventure all on its own and a totally different video title for this birth story. So anyway, so we get to the hospital. My husband parks, and you have to go up a couple of flights of stairs to get to the hospital entrance. And so I was excited about this, though, because, as you know, walking helps the baby come out. You know, it helps movement, it helps your pelvis open up, and it helps the baby come down and through and all the things, right? So I was like, no, don't get a wheelchair, don't drop me off. I'm going to walk with you. And hopefully this will help accelerate labor, which I definitely think it did, because we got to the point where my contractions were significantly stronger, and I had to stop walking every now and then to hold onto my husband's arm and just breathe through the contraction. But it wasn't so bad that I couldn't walk between them, which was good. So we made it into the hospital, to the elevator, up to labor and delivery. And I think till then it was pretty manageable. We get into triage, and the nurse is, taking all my vitals and stuff. And she says, hey, just to get a baseline, we like to take a little bit of blood now. And then that way, if we need to check your blood later, if, during or after labor, we like to be able to do that. Are you okay with that? And I said, sure. At that point, my contractions were getting stronger, but they weren't so terrible. So I said yes. And we had gotten to the hospital. Joe, do you remember when we got to the hospital? I think it was because we left at 6, right? Did we get to the hospital? When did we get there? 6:30? Do you remember? I don't think we checked the time.
6:30, 6:45.
6. Okay, so we'll say 6:45 at the latest. So I had been having contractions at that point for only about an hour and a half, because I woke up at 5:15 with them. So that gives you a little bit of context for how quickly my labor was moving compared to my first baby. So we are sitting in triage. She goes to take my blood. Not that nurse, another nurse came in to take the blood, and she misses it somehow, or my vein moved, or I don't even know what happened. And I got a contraction that was very intense, very strong, very insistent, we'll say. So I was like, okay, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's it. I'm not going to give blood right now. I got to go. And she was like, are you sure? And I said, I know that this is moving quickly. I cannot hold still enough for you to take blood anymore. So she said, okay. So we walked over to the labor and delivery room, and they had a water birth tub available. I was so excited. I was so happy. And I was ready for the opportunity to have the water ease that pain and pressure, and to kind of just allow the labor experience to happen in the tub. And that's what I was really looking forward to. Things did not necessarily go according to plan, but I did give birth in the water. So I'll tell you what happened. So we go into the labor and delivery room, and there were a couple nurses there. They were so nice. They were filling up the tub. And so they said, you can go ahead and undress. And I took everything off below my nursing bra. And I did this in my first labor, and I really thought it was amazing. And so I did it in my second labor, which was that I came to the hospital in a nursing bra. And that's because I wanted to be able to just pull the sides down and do immediate skin to skin and start trying to nurse and all of that with the baby, and not have to worry about taking off my bra. And it worked really well. So I recommend that a lot. So I got into the birth tub in my bra, and that was it. And honestly, they were totally fine. If you wanted to take everything off, you could have. I don't know. I just felt comfortable in my bra, so I kept it on. I didn't really think about anything beyond that. So I stripped down. I'm holding on to Joe. And by this point, I do have to stop and not just hold still, but I am like full into the throes of a contraction. So sometimes I lean forward or to the side or whatever my body wanted me to do. And they were very, very encompassing. I had to really focus to breathe through them, keep my low noises and my growls and my moans, all of those things very intentional so that I didn't lose focus. But the contractions really shocked me because they were coming fast and very, very hard. It was different than my first labor for sure. The intensity just ramped up so quickly, like so much more at an accelerated rate than my first labor. And I know that they say that that's common, and I'm here to tell you that was my experience. So I strip down, I'm holding on to my husband, and we start walking toward the bathroom where the delivery tub is filling up with water. And I get to the bathroom, and I'm about to step onto the edge of the tub, and I feel inside, I feel like a snap, like a rip. I can't even explain how it felt. And I swore I heard it. It just like resonated through my whole body, and it was my water breaking. I know it. And I was like, oh, I think my water just broke. And the nurse said, okay, well, your contractions are likely about to get a lot more intense. And I was like, great. Like, I don't know if I want that. But I knew that was the way it would be, right? Because I have watched a million birth stories online. So I knew that's what they would tell you. And so I said, okay. I waited for the next contraction to pass, and then I stepped into the tub with my husband's help. And as I step in, the amniotic fluid comes out, and it's just this stream of fluid that goes right into the tub. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for the water to, and they were like, you are going to give birth in here. It's totally fine. And you're just going to have to deal with it. Like, sit down. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to sit in my hot water and amniotic fluid, and that's going to be fine. So I sat down, and here's where it gets interesting. So I will tell you, I do think that the water was very, very helpful for the pressure. It helps with the pressure that you feel when the contractions come, because I think it helps sort of take away some of the gravity pressing on you, I'll say, or like the weight of your baby, or I don't really know exactly how it works, but I do think it's helpful. But I didn't get to experience the wonderful magic of sitting in the water and contracting in the water and kind of working up to transition and all of that, because the next part of my labor happened incredibly quickly. So I'm in the water, and the contractions that hit me were like nothing I can describe. I don't even remember my first labor being this painful. And the only thing I can think is that my second baby was coming at such a quick rate that my body still needed to do the work of getting her out, but in like a condensed time frame. So it just meant, I think, that the pain was a little bit more intense. That's the only thing I can think, because the contractions, the surges, as they say, you're supposed to call them when you do it unmedicated, the surges they shocked me. I will say that. And it took every bit of my focus to just breathe through them. I also found it interesting in the tub that because my husband wasn't directly by me, he couldn't really do counter pressure. When I had my first baby, he was incredible at the counter pressure. Whenever I needed him to press on me, he did. But in the tub, I was by myself in the tub. He wasn't in there with me. And so it was an interesting experience. I don't know if counter pressure would have helped, or having him get in with me would have helped. I'm just not sure, but I definitely noticed the lack of it for sure. So I get in the water, and I have a few contractions that are very, very painful. So I just kind of am at this point, I'm facing the room, I'm facing the labor and delivery room, and the edge of the tub is right here in front of me, and I'm just kind of clutching onto it basically, and I have my head just kind of on my arms, and I'm resting on the edge of the tub, and I felt that that was a really comfortable position because I was on my knees in the water, and I was leaning forward, and I felt that my body was just well positioned to keep moving things along. And so that's what I did for the few contractions following my getting into the water. I think I probably had 20 or so contractions in this phase of things before the midwife came in that was going to be delivering the baby. And I will tell you that this woman was so calm and reassuring and like direct but kind. I don't know. It was just the perfect blend of what you would want in a midwife when your contractions are just wild. And there was a point at which the contractions got so intense that I really did kind of lose focus. And I was like, I think I started to maybe whimper a little bit. I think that's the only word I can use to describe how I was feeling because the pain was just so shocking to me. And the nurse said, "Don't be afraid." And I just was sitting there at the edge of the tub with my face in my arms, and I just was like, I am not afraid. 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 And it was just a mantra. I kept saying it over and over again. And I don't know why, but it helped. And it helped to steady me. And I don't know, it was really wonderful. So I was grateful to that nurse for saying that to me. So the midwife says to me, "Hey, can you flip so that you are leaning against the back of the tub and your legs and feet are toward me so that I can access the baby?" And I thought she was insane because I'm like, I'm having the most intense surges of my entire life, and you want me to move somehow. I just didn't think it was possible, but I wanted her to be able to access the baby, of course. And so in between surges, once the next surge was over, I was able to move very quickly. And so I sort of pulled my legs out from under me so that they were facing like this. Okay, so my legs are like this. And I am leaning backward against the tub, and my arms are kind of like this. So I'm bracing against the tub. And it was actually funny. At one point, I almost slipped and went under. So that was a little inelegant. And I will say to just be careful, especially if your amniotic fluid goes in there, because the water is very, very slippery, and you want to be steady and don't accidentally drown yourself. So I was able to brace against the tub, and that was good because the next few contractions were more of the same, very intense pressure. And then there was a little bit of a break, and then I felt like I needed to push, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just cannot believe I'm saying this, but I think the baby's coming. And she was like, okay, do you feel that you have to push? And I said, yeah. And she was like, okay, then you can go ahead and do that. We are all ready for you. If you need to do that, let's go. And I couldn't believe it because we had just gotten there, I feel like. But I don't know, my body just knew what to do. And I learned in my first labor that trusting my body was absolutely the right thing to do. And I wasn't going to question it now. So I was like, okay. So I started to push. And something that I want to highlight for you, if you feel like you have the ring of fire, that's what they call it, was a different breathing technique that I learned from Bridget Tyler. She does these birth courses on YouTube, but then there's also a birth class that you can buy. And I bought her birth class, the Built to Birth course, and I just thought it just gives you everything you need for hospital delivery, whatever, like unmedicated. I think she really focuses on unmedicated births. which is what I wanted. And I just found it to be an amazing course. So anyway, I can't remember if I saw this in the course or in her YouTube videos, but she talks about this form of breathing, if you get the ring of fire, where your body is telling you, stop pushing, like this hurts. This hurts a lot. Our muscles aren't ready yet. They're not stretched enough. And what you do is, if you are pushing and there's that pain right at the edge, then you stop pushing and you breathe. Instead of like, like pushing down and out, you breathe like, and it like does these little pushes as your baby is crowning, and it helps your muscles to kind of open and loosen. So you're like kind of coughing a little bit, I guess, but you're just, and I remember filing it away mentally when I watched the video and thinking, okay, I'll do that if I need to. And this happened. I'm pushing the baby out. I get the ring of fire and I just start to breathe like that. And it was actually funny because one of the nurses said, well done. Like it was like she appreciated what I was doing. I don't know. It was really motivating. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm doing the right thing. So that really helped. And I did that for a couple of pushes. I was breathing, coughing that way. And it helped so much to kind of ease my muscles and help my body relax into the baby coming out. And then I was able to push. The head came out. And the midwife said, okay, the head is out. You just need one more and we'll bring out the rest of the baby. And so I was able to do that. And it was really nice. I do think the water helped in that regard in the pushing phase. It just didn't feel as painful to push the baby out in the water as it did when I had my first baby on a hospital bed. So that was great. So she pulls the baby out of the water. And then my cord broke. So the umbilical cord is connected to the baby and connected to me still, right? Because I have the placenta still inside and the cord rips and blood just starts to gush from the end of the baby's cord and the end of the cord that was still in me. And the tub, Joe was describing it, it just went immediately red. And he said that it was absolutely terrifying to watch. But somehow the midwife was able to hold on to this slippery newborn, clamp her hand on the cord from the baby, and clamp her hand on my cord all at once before her nurses are able to give her clamps, like actual medical clamps, so that she could use tools to keep them clamped, right? But she was able to use her hands to stem the flow of blood from both of us incredibly quickly. And Joe said he was so impressed by her response and how just quickly and calmly she was able to handle the situation. But it was very scary. There was just a lot of blood. It was blood everywhere. But we were able to, there was no we involved. She did it all and she was incredible and amazing. So she stopped the blood and then she said, okay, are you ready to take your baby? And I was like, yes, okay, yes. And she puts the baby on my chest and I'm still in the water. I'm still in the tub. So at this point, I just braced my feet against the side of the tub closest to the midwife. And I braced my back against the back of the tub. And then I was able to hold the baby, and the baby, though, wasn't moving. And I said to the baby, because at this point, nobody else existed but that little newborn. And I said, listen, I have worked so hard and you and mama have gotten to know each other for months. You have got to wake up. You've got to come to me. And oh man, just remembering it, I was so scared, but I was so determined. I was like, no. This baby will wake up. There is no other option. So they were scrubbing the baby with these towels and I was patting her back, trying to just get her to respond. And at this point, we still didn't even know she was a girl. I just thought the baby, that's it. It was just my baby. And eventually the baby did start to cry. And it was the sweetest, most relieving sound I've ever heard in my entire life. But she did, and it was wonderful. And they asked me if they could take her and get her vitals and see if they needed to do anything for her since she was a little bit delayed in making sounds. And I said yes. And I had Joe go with her. And then the midwives said, okay, the midwife and the nurses, they were like, okay, we're going to get you out of the tub and over to the hospital bed just so that we can see if you have any tears. We'll get you cleaned up, because at this point I was sitting in a tub of watery blood. Bloody water. Yeah, bloody water. And so I was like, okay. And I wasn't really sure because I had just given birth. I didn't know if I could stand okay, if I'd be, shaky or something. But actually, it was really nice. I just stood up and they each gave me an arm. And so I used that to step up and over the edge of the tub. And I walked over to the bed and it was fine. I didn't even feel shaky at that point. But I got into the hospital bed. They took off my bloody bra and I just covered up, and they were just doing some cleanup. And I actually didn't tear enough at all for stitches. They said I had a little bit of one, but it wasn't even a level 1. And she gave me the option to be stitched or not. And I said, I might as well just not. If it's not bad enough that you think stitches are necessary, then I'm just going to leave it and see how I heal. Which I will tell you that I healed just fine. And actually the healing after that was easier and less painful than my first baby, which I had a level 2 with her. So this one was really, really nice. And I cannot help but think that a lot of that was attributed to the water and also me trying to do that cough breathing and help my muscles loosen up for her to come out. So they took her vitals and everything was fine. They said that she was okay. And so they brought her over to me, and that was, it was such a relief because I didn't know. I just was so shocked by the experience of having her not wake up right away. For them to tell me that she's fine was a great relief. So anyway, they did the cleanup, the placenta came out and everything was fine, which was a relief as well. And then though, it was interesting. I definitely started to shake a lot, and I was losing more blood this time. So they actually had to keep me in labor and delivery for a few hours before transferring me to postpartum, because I ended up just losing a lot of clots, and they said they weren't comfortable releasing me yet. And so I stayed there for a bit, and just really was like soaking in those newborn skin to skin time. And I nursed her for the first time, and that was nice. But I will say this, the cramping, the afterbirth cramping with the second baby was insane. It was a lot more painful than the first baby. When you start nursing and your uterus contracts down, that was more surprising to me. In terms of the pain level. And that was something that actually lasted for like a little over a week. I just had very intense cramping, which surprised me a lot. But everyone says that it happens. I just sort of had forgotten about that until I felt it. And apparently with every baby you have, the cramping gets worse, is what I'm told. So if we have another one, I'm not looking forward to that part. But I will say that all in all, I think that even though I didn't have as much time in the tub as I would have liked, because let me tell you guys, I started having contractions at 5:15 and the baby came at 8:15. So the getting ready, leaving my house, triage at the hospital, water birth experience, like delivery in the, laboring in the tub, delivery in the tub, all of that was 3 hours. I just cannot. I think that even counts as a precipitous labor. Tell me in the comments if that's wrong, but that was so quick. I was very shocked. But overall, I think the water birth experience was really, really great and helpful. I would be willing to do it again if we have another baby. And I think the midwife and the nurses were so calm and prepared. The water was lovely. Actually, the water was warmer than I thought it would be, which I don't know. You don't really know what to expect, but they made it they made it like hot tub hot, you know? And I hope the next time I am able to have a little bit more time in the tub if we have another baby, I don't know. But I hope that for you, you have the chance to enjoy it. And if you have the opportunity to actually deliver in a hospital tub, I really just thought the experience was wonderful. And the cord avulsion, I know, can be sort of a common thing, but they were so responsive and so quick to just get the situation under control in such a competent and medically smooth, calm way. I was just, I couldn't have been happier with the medical care that I got and the treatment. And I felt that the whole experience overall was fantastic. So if you have any questions that I didn't address, please let me know in the comments. I'm happy to share all details because I want this birth story to be helpful. I got so much comfort and help from other birth stories that I watched online. So I want this to be the same experience for you. And I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that this birth story was helpful. And I will see you in the next one.